Welcome back, Rise Up Nation, to another episode of Rise Up in Real Estate. And I don't think I've been this excited to do an episode in a long time. I've got my longtime friend and actually my only real estate coach that I've had in my 20-year career, Mr. David Scott, coming to us today from his ranch somewhere in the world. I won't even tell you where it is because it's like super private. But really, David Scott has meant, other than my wife and a few other people, it meant more to me in my life and my development than any other human. So, David, I couldn't be more honored to have you on the show. So, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, my pleasure.
Now, I know there's a lot to those of you that know David Scott. And David, our audience is agents in the South Carolina market. We're in coastal South Carolina, agents, RE/MAX agents, and lots of other agents. But David is a longtime practitioner and a longtime expert coach in the business. Very, very studied on what he produces. But David, I want you to tell us, if you can, tell me where did it all begin for you with putting together what we consider now complete business development for agents? How did that start in your mind back in the day, if you can remember that?
Yeah, I started off as a real estate agent in 1995 and got into real estate because I was looking for a way to supplement my income. I was teaching at a local junior college, loved to teach, but I just couldn't make any money. And I'm like, okay, what can I get into that would allow me to supplement my income? And real estate popped into my mind. And so, which is for all the wrong reasons, right? I mean, I'm totally anti part-time agent, and here I am starting off as, hey, I want to do this part-time. And so back in '95, you had to take a physical examination, and they sent it off to the state, and it took a while. What the results for the exam? What they weren't immediate, so I don't know. It took up like 4 to 6 weeks to get your results back. And when the results came back that I'd passed the exam, it was June. So I had the complete summer off from teaching. And driving around looking for a sponsoring broker, I was looking for a broker that I thought would be most apt to hire a part-time agent. And so I pulled into this little mom and pop real estate company that at the time had 5 agents. It was called The Real Estate Company. That was the name of the company, The Real Estate Company.
Okay.
And walked in and said, "You don't know me. I don't know you. Would like to have a license. Will you sponsor me?" And for whatever reason, the guy said yes. And so results came back. I'd passed the exam. It was June, complete summer off from teaching. Went in, answered the phone one day, sold my first house in the first 2 weeks, and just was immediately hooked. And so never went back to teaching again, stayed in real estate full time just because I was enamored with it. It was challenging, it was fun, it was uncomfortable. All the things that make for a good career, I think. So I was able to make money. I did that for 2 years, was a independent salesperson for 2 years. And then Keller Williams, one of my mentor in real estate, his name was Pete MacArthur. And when I first joined the real estate company, he was there as one of those 5 original agents. And he kind of took me under his wing. I guess he saw something in me and took me under his wing and mentored me. Well, after about 18 months that I was with that office, he got recruited over to a Keller Williams office locally. And he kept trying to convince me to come over as an agent. And I'm like, nah, I really feel a sense of loyalty to Lonnie, who was our broker, Lonnie Brown. And so I'm going to stay over here, even though it was, the commission structure at KW was far better than what I was getting at the real estate company, which was a 50-50 split. And then a position came open in his office there that was what KW calls team leader. And so he called me, goes, "Man, I got a position that's tailor-made for you." And so I said, "Well, what is it?" And he said, "It's called team leader." And he said, "It'll give you the opportunity to couple the 2 things I know that you love the most, teaching and real estate." And I said, "Look, the answer is no. but out of respect to you, I'll go and I'll listen. I'll talk to them. And so famous last words, right? And
Right.
so I went and interviewed with their regional director. And the whole time I think I'm being interviewed for the local office, which was in my hometown there in Texas. And about halfway through my interview process, that position gets filled by someone else. And I thought, well, that's kind of strange because I thought the process was going well. So I called up the guy. I go, hey, I see the position's been filled. I appreciate the opportunity. Um, and he said, well, hang on, we've got another office in mind for you. And I said, really? I didn't know there were two KW offices in this town. He said, there aren't. The other office is in North Houston. I said, well, how far north in Houston? He said it's about. I said, because I won't go work past, and this is a road that runs a major thoroughfare in Houston. It's called 1960. I said, I won't go, south of 1960. He said, and this was south of Houston. I'm sorry. I said, I won't go south of 1960. He said, how about 2 blocks south? And I thought, well, tell me what you have. And so they had a office that was failing miserably. And I guess my ego got the best of me. And I decided to go ahead and take that challenge on. And when I got there, they had 60 agents. And so I thought my first process was to sit down with all 60 agents. And after that process, I ended up releasing 30 of those agents, either for lack of production or for a negative attitude. I won't tolerate either. And so I was left with 30. And so it's like, okay, what do these 30 most need? What do these 30 people most need? And it was my conclusion was they need direction. They need a sense of direction. They need a sense of training. Most of them don't really understand what to do and or how to do it at a proficient enough level to survive, much less thrive, as a real estate agent. And so I remember calling up KW, and this was in the early days of KW, right? They had maybe 3,000 agents nationwide. I remember calling up to the corporate office in Austin and said, hey, can you send me your agent training program? They said, we don't have any. And I'm like, uh-oh, okay. So that told me if you want to train these people, you're going to have to create. And so that's how it started. I remember my very first class, I worked all week, created a listing class, the leverage is in the listing. So I'm going to create a listing class, which I think was a grand total of like, I don't know, 3 or 5 pages. I mean, it wasn't anything grand, but it was something, and I thought it could help. And it was on the listing, presentation. And so I put out the word, hey, we're going to have our first class. I think you guys are going to be excited about it. And I get there, bright and early, and 2 people are in the room with me. And so I start up, and there was a man and a lady, and the lady raises her hand and she said, hang on, where is everybody? I said, I guess they decided not to come. She goes, oh, I thought this was mandatory. I said, no. Nothing we're going to do here is mandatory. Well, she got up and left. She said, okay, well, I'll see you later. So it was me and this one guy. His name was Warner Folsom. He's since passed. Ex-postal worker. And he gravitated toward the class. And I felt we had a really great class. And so he goes, can we do this again? And so we did it again. And then all of a sudden his production starts to creep up a little bit, right? It starts to rise, and everybody's like, what's going on? What are you guys talking about in there? I'm like, well, come find out. And so we start building that way a little bit internally. And then what I realized, Tad, was these 30 agents aren't going to get the office to where the office needs to be, for sure. And so I've got to now go recruit what I would deem as learning, at the time, what we called learning-based agents. And that's agents who I've since progressed past learning-based agents toward mastery-based agents. Mastery-based agents are agents who are passionate about growing and progressing, in their careers. And so I started to recruit those types of agents. And it's through those classes that I started to build, what we deemed a complete agent development program. I formed the habit of videotaping every single class that I taught there. And it started with one agent. It grew into standing room only. That we then had to take, because we had a small office at the time, we then had to take training off site to a local furniture store, and then ultimately into a church. But that's how I used to videotape everything, and I would bring those tapes home and I would review those tapes. And that's how I started to create dialogue, because most of the class, because I didn't have manuals or really great material at the time, most of those classes were just improvisations. You're right. It's just people going, "Hey, when somebody says this, what do I say?" And I would go, "Well, try something like this." And I would say something, go, "Oh, can you repeat that?" I go, "Yeah, I don't think I can, but hey, we have it on video." So I'd bring it home and I'd document, all the dialogue, and the script started to build that way. And then just slowly over time, I got that office up to 120 agents, highly profitable. And because of that, I was given the opportunity to go purchase my own territory and area. And so I did that. And so I continued with the developmental programs, and we started adding things onto it, and ended up, I think, with a very complete and proven system for sure.
And what you were teaching in the very beginning, David, you kind of said you gravitated towards, you were the guy that gave you the opportunity for the interview said it's teaching and real estate, your two loves that you didn't even know you had 6 months prior. What did you teach based on your experience? Like those first few classes, was it just stuff you had learned and were doing in living rooms for that listing class?
Pretty much, yeah.
That's how it was.
And then what I think what it forced me to do, Tad, was to become what I call a student of the real estate sales game. And so I just started studying, and I started reading, and I started going in depth on, and it's not just in real estate, but in business and in self-help and self-improvement. Just started diving into books and consuming as much content as possible. And then always reading it with the eye of, okay, how can I incorporate this into our system? How can I make our system better based on this idea or this concept? And I think that's how it grew, and that's how it evolved. My systems are firmly rooted in like Michael Gerber and Stephen Covey and Andy Stanley and those types of people. I rarely would go out and read other real estate coaches in their content, because I didn't want to be tempted by going, "Oh, I like that idea. Let me put that in here." And then all of a sudden, this isn't David Scott's content. This is, Mike Ferry's content or somebody like that. So I tried to focus in on, just basic business principles, because I always saw real estate and real estate sales as a business, right? It's that, look, you're not an employee of someone else. You're a self-employed business person. And so we always approached agents as the CEOs of their own businesses. And that's the way we treated them. And it's like, look, our role in this whole thing is to help you become as profitable as you can be as soon as you can be. And that has everything to do with your willingness to understand the difference between a sales approach and an entrepreneurial approach. And I shied away and moved away from, what I would call a sales approach, and started to gravitate more towards an entrepreneurial approach for real estate agents.
Yeah, and that's what we, just for the listeners to catch up a minute. This is the program that we were introduced to at Remax Southern Shores 12 years ago. And looking back, I could say it's kind of like a flagship moment in our company when we were introduced to Momentum. Even though we had no idea what we were wrapping our minds around, it was a Remax not mandated class, but something that we were encouraged to go to. And I sat and I'm realizing now it was built at Keller Williams, but now it was offered to us at Remax, and we heard it. And Mandy and I looked at each other and we said, the entrepreneurial part of it was what caught our eye, that it was a complete business plan. And that's loose language. But for us, as we looked at it 12 years ago, we said, here we have a pretty good real estate company. We have attracted a lot of people because we're nice folks and we service them well and we're number one market share. But we literally dismantled the whole thing and started over. We were 8 years, 9 years in, and we rebuilt it. And I talk to you on a regular basis. We're still rebuilding it. I wanted to ask you, with that, how different is the structure now? Like if you could say, hey, it's similar than it was when I first started. I know it's grown and built, but I'm interested in you saying I wasn't looking at other real estate coaches. You were building your system, and is it still that same system, just deep versus wide kind of a concept?
For sure. Yeah. If you look at, and again, the scripts and the dialogues evolved, and I was teaching on a daily basis back then. So it was real easy just to make, certain tweaks. And, it's the compound effect, little tweaks or little tweaks to the content and little corrections and little improvements over time make big differences. So, if we went back and looked at my original handout compared to what exists now, it's night and day, right? But I think you're right. What I tried to do is say, look, I want to help agents master what I would consider the fundamentals, right, or the basics. So to me, it's about mastery and it's about basics. And so we're going to do a deep dive on that. So we're going to go, I think when most people start to train, especially in the real estate industry, my experience has been they take the exact opposite approach. It's more, I liken more training that happens in other offices to it's more like infotainment, if you will, and and there's always a pressure on the office to offer something new, so that it curious agents will come in and it's like, hey, here's something new. Hey, here's something new. Here's something new. And that's how they build attendance. And I don't know, I just never bought into that because I just don't think you can gain any traction from that. To me, it was, well, let's focus on what actually makes a difference, right? I mean, it's not rocket science. I mean, people have lived before us. We know what works. We know what doesn't work. Other industries have existed before us. We know what works in those industries. We know what doesn't work. So let's just apply, basic fundamentals, basic business fundamentals, and let's go deep on that. So it's, where most people, I think, have a tendency to go an inch deep and a mile wide. I want to go, an inch wide and a mile deep. And I continue to find layers to this day, anytime I pick up the content and review it, and I'm not as dedicated to the agent content now as I am the office content, but golly, those two systems mirror one another, dramatically. They're one and the same. You're in the same basic service type business. So the business principles from an entrepreneurial perspective, they're exactly the same. They're identical. From an operational perspective, you start to see, some differences, but they're slight. They're for the most part, a real estate brokerage and a real estate sales business mirror one another.
Yeah, we seemed to have started to get more buy-in years ago, when we explained it from a perspective of, hey, we've done this ourselves. We are doing this ourselves with our business. And I don't think it took a minute for the agents to understand the respect that we had for them, that we were challenging them with this concept. Because most, like what you said, is let's just get better at selling a house. making a commission, and let's see how many of those we can stack on top of each other as opposed to a process. And I'm fascinated still. I mean, so from that first day, you said 95 or 96 is when you kind of started having this. I mean, and even today, David will send us emails and white sheets on a deeper dive on a concept that we've talked about hundreds of times already. And is that the kind of person you always have been, David? Just a student, like very focused, very passionate, very. I mean, you're unique. You're like a unicorn in my mind, anyway.
I got that way, I guess, my freshman, sophomore year in college. Um, High school, not so much. You know,
Yeah.
I look, I grew up in a kind of a chemical plant town, right? So, you know, you looked all around and there were nothing but chemical plants. And growing up where I grew up, it was like, okay, you either go to college or you go to work at one of these chemical plants. And I come from a broken family. My parents split up when I was 16, and I chose to live with my mother, who had never worked a day in her life. So I took a job at 16 to help support my mother. And so when I graduated high school, I didn't really think I could go to college. I mean, I didn't think that number one, I didn't have the funds, and my parents weren't going to pay for it. And so it was like, okay, I guess I'll, try to get on at one of the plants, at one of the local plants. And so I took a job at DuPont Chemical Plant as a laborer. So I had to join the labor union. And my job that summer was busting concrete and digging ditches there at the chemical plant, in 100-degree heat and 100% humidity. And at the end of that summer, it's like, yeah, this isn't gonna work. I don't want to do this. And so I enrolled in college, and I guess it's when I had to grow up, immediately, because I had to pay for my own college. And if I'm paying for it, then, well, God, I want to start to make some good grades. And so I figured out a system of how to make really good grades in college. And, the better you do, the higher the expectation for yourself, not only from yourself, but from others, starts to grow, and it starts to put a little good type of pressure on you. And so I started to get really focused and really disciplined, at that time, for sure. And I
Yeah.
think that's followed me. I think I've been able to create some really good habits around those character traits, for sure. But before then, you would have looked at me and thought, probably not going to make it.
Not much chance he's not going to make
Yeah,
it.
yeah. In fact, I think my dad told me that one time. He goes, "Yeah, I look at your future and I don't see good things." So, and he wasn't wrong at the time. It just, I was lost. I didn't have any sense of direction. I really didn't have a moral compass at that time. I mean, it was just, I was pretty much raising myself. I mean, at that point. So,
Right, right. Now I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to preface it by saying, other than hunting and your love for nature and what you do at the ranch, which you've been kind enough to share with me, what are you most passionate about? If you could pick one thing, either answer this: most passionate about with complete business development, or you think the biggest, or maybe both, the biggest stumbling block for agents in their business development? Pick one or both, and dive in. And I'm put you on the spot.
yeah, I think what I'm most passionate about is helping people reach their potential. Because I don't know that a person can reach their potential on their own. I think there has to be, an interdependent connection there, and that agents have to be in an environment that supports whatever it is they're attempting to accomplish. And that Covey talks about this, Stephen Covey talked about this in his books, where you have three different types of relationships, and the highest form of relationship is an interdependent relationship. And that's what a good, healthy, functional relationship should be, right? It should be that together we're able to accomplish more than what we could apart. And that because I'm in a relationship with you, I'm going to be able to accomplish far more than what I could by myself or with someone else. I just think that that's I gravitate towards that. I've experienced that. I've helped a lot of people. I've been helped by a lot of people, and I just know that to be true. So I think that that to me is what I'm probably most passionate about, is developing and nurturing relationships. Where I think most agents miss it, is that they tend to be more what I would call spontaneous and reactive than intentional and proactive. I think most people just get up and react to the day as the day presents itself, and I think that they're constantly in this this reactionary mode, and I've just found that to be extremely unhealthy in my personal life because I've behaved that way as well, and in watching others, that just at the end of the day they don't do as well as what they could otherwise do if they would just put a little effort into being a little more intentional and much more proactive. And the catch is you can't be proactive until you've first been intentional. You could be active, but that's the difference. And everybody's heard this. That's the difference between being busy and productive.
Yeah, I think that's. I read something not recently about that very thing. How you can be. A lot of us just are moving from one thing to the next. The shiny objects syndrome, the newness of things distracts us from the regularity of just consistent actions. What is it they say? The pain of discipline or the pain of regret.
Yeah.
Like you pick your
And
pain.
discipline's tough, right? I mean, discipline's tough. And the key, the key to succeeding, I think, is consistency. We always say that if you consistently do the right things, then your success is inevitable. Okay, well, I mean that's a mouthful, right? Because you really have to break that sentence down. You have to understand what consistently means. You have to understand what right things means. You have to understand what success means for you. And you have to understand what inevitable means. I mean, if you can understand all of that, then you got it, But my experience has been is that most people, especially in our industry, they don't consistently do the right things. They're not consistent. They're sporadic, right? They sporadically do the right things. And so if you sporadically do the right things, your success isn't guaranteed. Your mediocrity is guaranteed. And this is a dangerous business for that because good amongst poor looks great. And so you never, especially in this industry, you never ever want to compare your results or your production to the masses or to the herd or to anyone else. Doesn't matter. You always compare yourself to your potential, right? And so that to me is where you definitely need someone in your life that's challenging you to be all that you can be, for sure.
Yeah.
If you never do the right things, then your failure is guaranteed. I guess that's the third thing. But if consistency is the key, and to me, consistency is daily, right? Then you have to go, okay, well, how does one remain consistent? Well, that has to do with discipline, right? So you're not going to be consistent unless you're disciplined. And what does discipline mean? Discipline is doing the right things even when you don't feel like doing them. And that's what gets most people in trouble right there. Because it's easy for me, because you'll hear this all the time. Who holds you accountable? I hold myself accountable. I go, BS on that. That's impossible because you're the best person at creating an excuse for yourself as to why you shouldn't or can't do what you need to do right now, simply because you don't feel like it. So you get into a lot of people that have what I call mood-driven behavior versus, values or character-driven behavior. And that's dangerous, right? And so you have to go, okay, well, why would somebody do something even when they don't feel like doing it? And you go, well, because they're motivated to do it. And then you start to look at this word motivation and what does that actually mean, and where does that come from? And I did my master's work in college on this very topic. And my, it was, can one person motivate another person? And my conclusion was no. I can motivate AIDU, but I can't motivate ATEU, because motivation, comes from within. That's an internal thing. So you have to go, okay, well, what motivates you? Well, I don't know. That's different for everybody, right? And that gets back to, what's your vision? What is it you're attempting to accomplish? And then it becomes, how negotiable is that vision for you? Because you have to have a vision set for yourself to where you go, it's unacceptable if I don't realize that vision. That creates the passion, because achieving anything beyond what you've currently achieved is going to push you out of your comfort zone. Well, you out of your comfort zone for an extended period of time is you being uncomfortable. So when we talk about aspiration, we talk about 4 levels of aspiration. There's the want, there's the desire, there's the passion, there's the obsession. Everybody wants it. Well, all that means to me is that you can talk about it. Here's what I want. And then it goes, will you allow that want to evolve to a desire? And what a desire means is that I'm willing to move towards it physically, as long as it's easy and convenient. And then you go, okay, well, most people are probably willing to do that, but that's not enough. Now you have to, that desire has to evolve into passion. Okay, are you passionate about it? What does that mean? That means you're willing to suffer. What do you mean suffer? It means you're willing to get uncomfortable and stay uncomfortable for an extended period of time. And until you're willing to do that, the chances of you realizing any meaningful vision for yourself are slim and none, in my opinion, anyway.
Right.
So you have to have a vision to create the motivation. You have to have the motivation to create the discipline. You have to have discipline to create the consistency. And people have to be taught that, right? You have to talk about this. You have to have a conversation about this, so people can go, where am I missing it? If I'm not consistent, am I disciplined? If I'm not disciplined, am I motivated? If I'm not motivated, right? Do I have a vision, a meaningful, worthwhile vision about which I'm passionate? And that's, most people don't. Most people don't.
And you're talking about personal or business, either one.
Oh, I think so. I think one of my biggest ahas in creating the content and continuing to be a student of the content and finding different layers is the overlap between business and life. When you look at the concepts and the ideas, if we just want to talk up here, right? Because there's concept, ideas, structure, flow, then there's script, dialogue, or nuts, bolts, whatever you want to call it. From at the concepts and idea level, business and life mirror to me. It's like, look, I can't be one person in business and another person in life. To me, it's important to be intentional and proactive in business. And it's also important to be intentional and proactive in life. And so it's, you start to see the overlap there. And then you start to find there's overlap pretty much in everything. I mean, I've used, because we take a consultative approach, to real estate. I took a consultative approach to raising my kids. I take a consultative approach to my marriage. We talk about retention responsibilities within an office. Well, those are nothing more than relationship responsibilities. I mean, if you want to have a healthy relationship, here are the 5 things that are going to help you do that. Not only in business, but in your personal life as well. And so there's just a lot of overlap there, which is, I really enjoy, I really do.
And what are you currently coached by anyone, or have mentors in your life that keep you accountable that way also now?
My mentors now, I think most of them have since passed. I still have an accountability peer partner that I talk to on a weekly basis. But for the most part now, as far as learning and mentoring, I get most of that through reading. I'm a voracious reader. I read every single day, 365 days a year, never take a day off. And I listen to a lot of podcasts and things of that nature. So I get my mentoring and tutelage through that. And then I also get it through just studying my own content and studying my own material and going, is there a better way to say that? Is that still relevant now? Has that evolved? I get up and do that at least 2 to 3 hours a day. So
Yeah, that's amazing. So forecast with me for 1 minute. I got three more questions. What, in your opinion, what's coming for us as real estate agents? And you don't have to elaborate on it, but just give me some concepts that we should be paying attention to. You and I have talked about this in our coaching sessions, that we need to be ear to the track, paying attention to, studying, coming around the corner, in your opinion.
the pithy side of me says, who cares?
Love that. Love that.
And here's why I say that, because I don't know. I mean, I can't control what happens around me. I can control my response to what happens around me. And I know this, and this gets back to values based versus mood based, or mood driven versus character driven. I do know if you stay purposeful, positive, and proactive, you can overcome any situation that you're faced with. And I mean any situation that you're faced with. So that's my immediate gut reaction. A more, probably a better response would be, you better pay attention to technology. Because I think I think when you look at, the 5 components of what I would call disruptive technology, up and coming technology. And by that, I mean like blockchain, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, robotics, cryptocurrency. I think those things are going to be highly disruptive forces within our industry. I think individually, each of those will allow us to be much more proficient in our roles as business owners and as real estate agents. I think that somewhere in the future, those 5 things are going to come together collectively, and that's going to be the big disruptor for the industry for sure. So I'd be paying attention to that for sure, but I wouldn't stress about it. I mean, I don't think that that's, anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
But I would be paying attention to that. I would be looking at, how can I use blockchain to help make me more proficient, and to separate me a little bit from my competitors, if you will. How can I use AI? VR is about to get really good. Virtual reality is about to get really good. How can I incorporate that, into my business? So I think I definitely would be paying attention to those for sure.
Yeah, and I know you.
And if anything that I've said, as far as you go blockchain, what's that? Or artificial intelligence, what's that? Or virtual reality, what's that? You better learn, right? Because
Right.
it's here, and it's just getting better and better and better. So
The reason I'm with you for 12 years is I like the pithy answer. You don't ever have to apologize with that for me, because I made a mistake one time of asking you what you thought of the market, and you were like, "Well, I don't ask that question anymore because it doesn't matter. It's not related to my daily activities." So I love that.
Well,
So
agents stress about that all the time, right? It's like, what do you think? What do you think is going to happen with mortgage rates? And I go, I don't know. I don't think about it. I, I don't. I try not to stress out or focus on things that I can't control. I mean, I can control me and how I respond, and I know, again, just from past experiences, if I stay purposeful, if I stay positive, if I stay proactive, I'll be fine. It'll all work out. So, why stress out? I don't know what the mortgage rates are going to do. I have no clue. You
right,
know, I
right,
know I still look at, I think, my son, he and his wife are going through a home purchase, and I asked him what rate he got, and he said 6 point something percent. And I'm like, God, that's still, to me, based on my history in real estate, still a fantastic rate,
Right. Right. Right.
I
You
mean,
gotta,
I remember selling homes at 9 and 10%, and people before me were selling homes at 18 and 19%. So
right.
people buy. Again, it's a real estate agent though, and it's a business owner too. As a human, you got to know your value. Yeah. I mean, you you can't just be an order taker in this industry. I don't think and survive very long. And especially if you want to thrive, you got to know your value as a listing specialist, and you have to know your value as a buyer specialist, and you have to be able to communicate that.
Yeah.
And
Excellent.
hopefully that's what we help agents do. We go, look, there's two basic departments in your business. There's the listing department and the buyer department. And to me, there's 47 vital listing activities and 47 vital buyer activities. Now, look, are there way more activities that I would call related to real estate? Yeah, but that's where you can get yourself in trouble, right? It's let's focus on these 47 or collectively these 94. And let's make sure we're highly proficient at these first. Optimize and then expand, right? So it's let's get highly proficient with these activities. Then if you want to go do some things beyond the fundamentals or beyond the basic, yeah, go for it, right? So, but
Love it.
that's to me that's where most people get in trouble is they're too busy working on related activities that they go, well, this is related to real estate. And you go, yeah, but it's not moving the needle. It's
Mhm.
not vital, you
Mhm.
know. And remember, it's if you consistently, which is daily, do the right things, that's the vital activities, then your success is guaranteed.
Yeah.
If you're not consistently doing vital activities, it's crapshoot, man.
Mediocrity is guaranteed.
Pretty much.
You've read a bunch of books, a bunch.
Uh, yeah.
Is it fair of me to say, give us one that you would recommend that's a changer?
Oh, for sure. And there's more than one, but I can give you one. And look, let me preface my comment with, to me, there's two different types of books. There's books that you read, and then there's books that you study. Okay? Because you're not going to read a book one time and go, got it, nailed it. There's you read to gain a basic understanding of what the book has to say, and then you think that at that point you go, is this relevant, and will this have a dramatic impact on my business if I study it? And by studying it, I mean going back and rereading and rereading and rereading and rereading. It's kind of like watching a movie. You watch a movie, and a really good movie, you want to go back and watch, 3 or 4 or 5, or there's some movies I've probably seen 20 some odd times. And you still, when you're watching those movies or reading those types of books, you go, God, where's that been? I've read this book, 10 times, and I still haven't seen that, or I didn't take that out. And that's kind of like, to me, that's more of a mastery based approach, right? You find things that are actually going to make a difference, and you go deep on them, and you're not going to get that done by reading it once. Or it's kind of like class. You're not going to show up to a class, and this is the way most real estate agents behave, right? Yeah, I've been to that class. When's the next one? There's a difference between been to the class and have internalized the class. In the beginning, you're in the class. At the end of this thing, the class ought to be in you. And so it's, and that takes time. That's, Malcolm Gladwell told us that's 10,000 hours, right? And so it's kind of comical. So I'll give you two books that I think you should study as a business owner. The best book, in my opinion, is The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. That's one that I've read just countless times.
Okay.
And then from a personal perspective, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. That's a book you want to study.
When was the first time you picked that one up? So back in the 90s, is that written back that far ago?
Yeah, it was written back then, but I probably didn't pick that up until because I read a bunch of other books before I got to that one. But I would say I picked that one up around late 90s, probably early 2000s.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are
And I don't know, Ted. I think I've probably read Seven Habits. And I've got it marked in the book, how many times each year I read it, I'll write the year in the page. At least 7, 8 times for sure. And I got on a path to where I was reading the E-Myth Revisited yearly, every single year. And if you get past that, if you get the basic message of E-Myth Revisited, he wrote another one. Gerber's written several books, but he wrote, if you really want to take a deep dive into Gerber, it's E-Myth Mastery is what it's called. And that's a pretty thick book. And I mean, it's dense. But God, I've gotten so much out of those books for sure. And if you're just looking for something that has a cool spiritual type message, kind of airy fairy, hey, we're gonna, light up the incense and meditate. Jonathan Livingston Seagull is probably one that I would recommend. And Richard Bach wrote that. It's a classic. You probably read it in high school or junior high and didn't really get it. But if you go back and read it now, God, there's so many lessons. I've created entire meetings and classes just around that book. And another one would be the War of Art, not the art of war, the War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. But God, there's so many great books.
I was going to say, I knew it would be a challenge. That's the hardest question I asked you all day, for you to give me one book.
Yeah, but again, if you take nothing out of that, understand there's a difference between reading and studying, right? Reading is, I think reading gets you to I know it, to the know it level, where study gets you to the I understand it level. And we always talk about, training in those lines too. And you don't take action based on what you know. You take action based on what you understand. And a full understanding requires study, and it requires practice too, for sure.
Yeah. Love that. Last question for you, my
Mhm.
friend. I've taken too much of your time, but you've been generous. What is it, if you could narrow down to one thing that you do on a daily basis? I titled this show Rise Up in Real Estate a few years ago when we picked it, because I was interested in what is it that people do to rise above the mediocrity in the world? And I've been fascinated by the answers I've gotten for this question. But is there something in your routine, if you have one, that makes you, I mean, I don't know what kind of guy you are. You seem like you might have a routine.
I'm the king of routine.
You can't give away. Like, if you had to give just one thing one day, what would it be?
Yeah. That I rise up. No, that I get up early every morning. I mean, I get up at 5 a.m. every single morning, regardless. I'm on vacation, I'm not on vacation, I'm visiting people, I'm not visiting people. 5 o'clock every morning. My wife doesn't get up that early. My son doesn't get up that early. I'm the only one up at that time. I go in to the kitchen, fix a cup of green tea, go sit down, and I read. And I'll read for at minimum an hour. And I do that every single day, regardless. And I think that that's the one thing. And I've been doing that for 20 some odd years. And I think that's the one thing in my life that's definitely made the biggest difference, for sure, 100%. Because when I read with a pen and a book and a spiral notebook. And so I'll read, and if I come across a concept and I go, oh, we need to explore that, or I need to think about that at a deeper level, then I'll start jotting in my spiral. And at the end of that session, when at the end of that hour, I'll get up, I'll make breakfast for myself, I'll fix another cup of green tea. Then I'll get in my office and I'll start to review my spiral. And I go, okay, what needs to be on what I would call a white paper? And that just means what needs to make it from my spiral onto my computer. And then when I get it on my computer in a Word document, I start to play with it a little bit and shuffle things around. And that's how I create all of my content, you know. And I do that religiously, day in and day out. So
Yeah, that's great. I've got, listeners have had 48 minutes of you, and I've had about 12 years of you, and I've just hoped that they pick up a little bit of what I've appreciated about you. I've told countless people this. I think you only meet a few people like you in the world in your lifetime. You're disciplined, you're purposeful, you're driven, you're charitable. Like you're doing all this for the good of other people, which is amazing to me. I mean, it helps you, yeah, but you're giving it all away, which I love. And I hope the listeners have picked up on that. But I also hope they picked up on the fact that it's not an easy road that you've chosen. It is the intentional road that you've chosen. And I respect that about you 100%, my friend. I mean, I just really, really have a lot, just more respect than I could even put into words. So thank you for sharing.
Well, the feelings mutual. And I think that's part of reaching your potential, right? And succeeding at a high level is you have to look and you have to find it within yourself to be willing to do things that other people are unwilling to do. And I think that's how you rise up. I think that's how you rise above, other people. And I prided myself on that, as a business owner, and still do to this day, that, part of what drives me and part of what motivates me is knowing that very few people are willing to do, this, whatever this may be. And because I'm willing to do this, then, I'm gonna reach my potential in this particular area. So it's I don't know, it's been a formula that's worked for me for a while. And so, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
I'm 100% on board with that, my friend. Thank you. I'm excited that we get to talk again on Wednesday. I've got some questions for you to dig a little deeper from the coaching perspective. And I wish you happy hunting. What season is it where you are on the ranch?
Right now, it's we can shoot exotics and wild boar, so hogs.
Okay. Not everybody wants this, but I expect a picture or two in the near future. I know you just got back there yesterday, and you'll be proudly doing your thing. And I appreciate.
I'm about to go as soon as we get off the phone. I'm gonna go run snare lines around the perimeter. So see if we got anything in the snares.
There you go. Send me a picture. There's something you guys can Google when we hang up here from our call. Rise Up Nation. I hope you enjoyed Mr. David Scott. David, thanks for taking your time today. I appreciate you immensely.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks, Dad.